Welcome to Personal Finance Cat, where I share my personal take on personal finance.
Welcome to the deep dive. So today, we've got a pretty important mission, actually. We want to give you the fastest, kind of most authoritative understanding of where AI really stands right now, cutting through all the noise and the hype. And we're diving deep into the definitive source for this, the Artificial Intelligence Index Report 2025.
Yeah, and it's important to stress this isn't just, another report. The AI index, well, it started back in 2017, and it's really become the gold standard for tracking this stuff. They use really rigorously validated data sourced globally, and you see it cited everywhere, major media, international organizations, governments too. And the big message this year, the consensus from the experts who compile it, it's clear. AI is no longer a story about what might be possible someday. It's really about what's actually happening now.
Okay, right. So let's unpack this. Let's get right to the essentials for you. We've kind of organized this deep dive around maybe three key tensions we're seeing in AI right now. First, the absolutely breathtaking speed of technical progress, just leaps and bounds. Second, the persistent big challenges that remain, particularly around complex reasoning and, data. And finally, this really uneven picture when it comes to responsible AI ROI and also what people around the world actually think about it. Let's kick off with that technical acceleration. Because the numbers, just looking at the last year, comparing 2023 to 2024, they're almost hard to believe. The source material really highlights these massive jumps on some super challenging technical benchmarks, things like MMU, GPQA, and SWE-Bench. These are designed to push the absolute limits of these advanced models.
And the models are just mastering these things at an incredible rate. Take MMMU, that's a multimodal reasoning benchmark, performance there, up 18.8 percentage points in just 1 year. Or GPQA, think graduate level general knowledge, performance jumped nearly 49 percentage points. That kind of jump tells you this large scale knowledge absorption is becoming, almost routine.
Okay, but the one that really made my jaw drop was coding, specifically SWE-Bench. This thing tasks AI with solving actual complex problems from GitHub, real world stuff. And get this, in 2023, AI solved 4.4% of these problems?
Yeah.
Pretty poor.
Yeah, basically struggling.
By 2024, that number shot up to 71.7%.
71.7%.
It's like they went from a total novice to, near mastery in 12 months.
It is an incredible jump, absolutely. But we need a bit of nuance here, right? While the models smash his benchmarks, the report does point out, they often outperform humans mostly in these controlled short-term settings. Like, here's a task, you've got 2 hours, go. Real-world programming, it needs more abstract thinking, knowing stuff across different projects, real creativity, things. These specific benchmarks, they still don't capture perfectly. So the percentage is huge, but doesn't mean human software engineers are obsolete next week.
It's really crucial context, definitely.
Yeah.
But even setting aside those specific tests, we're seeing capabilities finally land that honestly felt like pure sci-fi not long ago. I'm talking about high-quality video generation.
Exactly. You remember those clunky, slightly horrifying synthetic videos from 2023?
Oh, yeah. That infamous Will Smith eating spaghetti thing.
Yeah, yes. The perfect example of the uncanny valley nightmare. But now, you look at systems launched in 2024, like OpenAI, SoarMA, Meta's Movie Gen, Google DeepMind's VO2. The comparison is just, it's night and day. Genuinely, the coherence, how complex they can be, it's a massive qualitative leap forward in multimodal AI.
And it's not just, making cool videos for social media. The scientific world is taking notice.
Yeah.
Big time. The sources highlight this. AI-driven research actually snagged 2 Nobel Prizes in 2024.
Yeah, that's huge validation.
One in physics for foundational work on neural networks, and one in chemistry for AlphaFold, the protein folding breakthrough.
Right.
Getting that level of recognition, it confirms this isn't just faster computers. It's fundamentally changing how science itself gets done. Okay, but maybe the most disruptive trend isn't just raw power, it's efficiency. This is where things go from, wow, that's impressive, to potentially this changes everything.
And what's so fascinating here is how much less hardware you need now to get the same level of, let's say, intelligence.
Right. Scale. Big models. That used to be seen as the only way. The AI Index points out, back in 2022, the smallest model that could crack 60% on MLU, that big general knowledge test, was Call-M. Huge model. 540 billion parameters. Fast forward just 2 years to 2024. Microsoft releases Phi 3 Mini. It gets the exact same score using only 3.8 billion parameters.
3.8 billion. Down from 540 billion.
Do the math on that.
Yeah.
It's a 142-fold reduction in 2 years. to hit the same bar.
Just think about what that means, that 142x reduction. It's not just a cool technical achievement for Microsoft, right? This is maybe the start of AI really being democratized. It means smaller companies, maybe even individual developers, can suddenly start working with AI that was previously only accessible to giants with massive server farms.
Right, running powerful stuff locally, maybe on your phone eventually.
Exactly, on the edge device. That's a game changer.
Oh, okay, there's always a but, isn't there? This new efficiency, it still hits a ceiling when it comes to cost and the very cutting edge. The report details this trade-off between performance and expense pretty clearly. Models like OpenAI's newest stuff, the report calls them O1, they show like superior complex reasoning.
Yeah.
But they cost a fortune and they're slow.
Yeah. To put numbers on it, one of these top-tier O1 systems might cost you $15 per million input tokens. Compare that to maybe $2.50 for something still very capable like GPT-4o.
Big difference.
Huge difference. And you pay a time penalty too. This O1 is apparently 40 times slower. So that absolute cutting-edge reasoning power, it still demands a massive premium in terms of resources, money, and time that most people just can't or won't pay right now.
And that relentless push for capability, it definitely has its costs. Which brings us right into our second section. These enduring sort of foundational challenges. Because even with those amazing leaps in efficiency and benchmark scores we just talked about, the sources are clear, complex, reliable reasoning, still a massive hurdle.
It absolutely is. When you ask these models to move beyond just matching patterns or predicting the next word and into real logical reasoning, planning ahead, they often stumble badly. Benchmarks specifically designed for this, like PlanBench, they test sequential problem solving. Models still find these really tough. We even see models failing basic logic tasks where technically the correct answer should be findable within their training data. That lack of solid logical consistency, it really limits where you can safely use them. Think high-stakes stuff like engineering or critical planning.
And then there's the ultimate test, right? True generalization. Can the AI handle things totally outside its training? That's the ARC-AGI benchmark. The report notes, 4 years back, the top score was 33%. Now, OpenAI's O3 model hit 75.7%. That sounds like staggering progress towards generalization.
It is staggering progress, no doubt. But again, the source forces us to look at the fine print, the context. To get the absolute highest scores on ARC-AGI, like upwards of 87.5%, the model needed a huge compute budget. The report literally says these top scores only happened when the compute budget went over the benchmark's $10,000 limit.
Wow. Okay, so that last bit of generalization is incredibly expensive.
Immensely expensive. That final cognitive step costs a fortune right now.
But compute cost isn't the only resource feeling the squeeze. Let's talk data. The data bottleneck. This looks like it's shaping up to be a real crisis. The sources paint a pretty stark picture here. The global data commons is actively shrinking.
Yes. This is crucial. Websites are getting much more aggressive about putting up walls, things like robots.txt exclusions, basically saying AI scrapers keep out. The report shows the proportion of tokens in the huge C4 Common Crawl dataset that are now restricted. It jumped massively from maybe 5-7% just a couple of years ago up to 20-33% now.
Hold on, maybe explain for our listeners C4 Common Crawl. Why does that restriction matter so much?
Good question. So think of Common Crawl as this enormous, publicly available collection of text scraped from the internet. It's like the raw library foundation that many, many large language models are trained on.
Got it. The bedrock.
Exactly. So when the report says 20-33% of that is now restricted, it means the AI industry is losing access to vast amounts of easily accessible, real-world, often high-quality text data. It forces developers to find data somewhere else.
And somewhere else increasingly means synthetic data, AI-generated data.
Precisely. That scarcity is driving this reliance on synthetic data. Now, the report does say that carefully layering synthetic data on top of real data seems promising. It might help avoid quality collapse. But it reiterates the danger of training models only on synthetic data.
Right.
That practice carries this well-known risk of model collapse.
And model collapse, just simply put, what does that mean for the user?
Basically, the model starts learning from its own potentially flawed outputs. If it's only trained on data generated by previous AI systems, which might contain errors or biases, it starts to forget what real human language or real-world facts look like. The quality degrades quickly, you get more hallucinations, less capability.
So we're trying to solve a data shortage with data that might actually be making the models worse over time.
That's the risk, yeah. It's a tricky balancing act.
And all this is compounded by this ongoing, frankly frustrating benchmarking problem. We rely on these scores that companies publish, but comparing them often feels messy, like comparing apples and, I don't know, slightly different apples, given a hint.
Absolutely. It's a persistent issue. The AI Index points out how companies sometimes use non-standard ways of prompting the AI that can inflate scores and make comparisons unfair. Like when Google first announced the Gemini Ultra score on MMLU, they used a technique called chain of thought prompting.
And why does that matter for comparison?
Because it's like giving the AI extra steps or hints to reason through the problem before it gives the final answer. It's a powerful technique. But if one company uses it for their benchmark score and others don't, you just can't compare the raw numbers directly. It's not apples to apples.
I see.
Plus, independent academic reviews keep finding systemic problems in many well-known benchmarks. The Better Bench analysis flagged issues in 24 prominent tests.
24.
Yeah. It just highlights how urgently we need better, more robust, contamination-proof ways to evaluate these systems, things like MMLU Pro, LiveBench, Helmet, that are trying to address this.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's talk about the real-world impact and how everyone's responding. This is where the report talks about the uneven evolution of responsible AI, or RAI. The need for safety is clearly urgent because incidents involving AI, they're rising sharply.
Yeah, the numbers are stark. 233 AI-related incidents reported globally in 2024. That's a 56.4% increase compared to 2023.
Over 50% increase in 1 year.
Exactly. It shows that the risks we talk about, privacy violations, deepfakes being misused, algorithmic bias causing harm, they aren't theoretical anymore. They're happening more and more in the real world.
And this is where that corporate lag really hits home for you, the listener. There seems to be this massive gap between organizations saying they recognize AI risks and them actually doing something concrete to mitigate them.
Yeah.
The fact that incidents are up over 50% while companies are slow to put safeguards in place. Well, it means you're operating in an environment with escalating risk, often without adequate safety nets from the companies deploying the tech.
The stats from the report are quite revealing on this. For instance, 57% of organizations surveyed say they recognize intellectual property infringement as a key RAI risk. That's good awareness.
Okay.
But only 38% report actually having measures in place to mitigate that specific risk.
Wow, that's a big gap, almost 20 points.
Exactly, a 19-point gap.
Yeah.
That represents a huge amount of unaddressed risk just floating around, especially in businesses.
And we absolutely cannot forget the persistent, stubborn problem of bias. The report finds that even advanced LLMs, we're talking supposedly state-of-the-art systems like GPT-4 and Claude 3 Sonnet, they still show implicit bias. This is even when they've been explicitly designed and fine-tuned to try and eliminate prejudice.
That's the tricky part, isn't it? The subtlety. These systems were engineered with safety and neutrality in mind, yet tests show they still associate negative concepts more often with, say, Black individuals, or they tend to suggest men for leadership roles more frequently in the text they generate. It shows this bias problem is really deeply embedded, probably originating from the vast amounts of biased human data they were trained on, and it's proving incredibly difficult to fully root out.
Okay, but while corporations might be lagging a bit on mitigation, global governments and international bodies, they seem to be mobilizing with real, genuine urgency.
It's actually quite remarkable, the global effort we saw ramp up in 2024. A real intensification of international cooperation. You had detailed frameworks coming out from the OECD, the UN, the African Union too. But the really big one, the landmark event, was the final passage of the EU AI Act.
Right, that was huge news.
Absolutely. It establishes the first comprehensive, legally binding regulatory framework for AI in a major global economy. That's setting the pace, setting the tone for basically any company that wants to operate internationally.
And what about here in the U.S.? Federal action seems slower, but the report highlights that state legislatures are really doing the heavy lifting, aren't they? Stepping into that void.
They really are. They passed 131 AI-related laws in the last year alone.
131.
Yeah, more than doubling the total from the previous year. The states are effectively acting as these laboratories for AI regulation right now.
And of course, the danger that gets the most headlines, the one that worries the public most directly, is AI and elections. The sources definitely document this global spread of AI-powered misinformation during 2024's election cycles.
Yeah, examples everywhere. Fake endorsements for a Mexican politician, deepfake audio clips of Pakistani party leaders, and of course various incidents related to the U.S. presidential election cycle as well.
But here's a crucial point the report makes, and it's important not to overstate things. Despite how prevalent and alarming these incidents are, the actual measurable impact of this AI-driven misinformation on election outcomes, it remains unclear.
That's right. The fear, the potential, the noise, it's definitely out there. but concrete evidence proving it significantly changed votes or swung elections. The report suggests that's still lacking, at least for now. Which actually leads us nicely into the human side of things, the economic context. Because while the tech and the regulations are churning, public opinion shows this really interesting global divide in optimism.
Yeah, this cultural gap is fascinating. One of the standout findings for me. Global optimism about AI, basically, people thinking it'll be more beneficial than harmful. It's super high in some places. Like China, 83% optimistic.
Yeah.
Indonesia, 80%. Thailand, 77%.
Really high number.
But then you compare that to Western countries.
Yeah.
The U.S., only 39% optimistic. Canada, 40%. The Netherlands, 36%. Huge difference.
It really makes you wonder about the reasons behind that divide, doesn't it? Is it about different media narratives, maybe government influence on public perception?
No.
Or maybe in places like China with massive state investment, people just see AI as inevitable progress.
Right.
Whereas a lower optimism in the West perhaps suggests more public anxiety about things like jobs, societal disruption, control.
But the report does note a shift, and this is a key takeaway for you listening. While overall Western optimism is still low, it's actually rising fastest in the countries that used to be the most skeptical.
That's interesting.
Yeah, Germany and France both saw a 10-point jump in optimism since 2022. The U.S. went up 4 points. So sentiment is shifting. It suggests maybe the visible usefulness of the technology is starting to outweigh some of those initial fears for people.
And when you ask people specifically about jobs, the feeling seems more pragmatic than panicked. Globally, 60% of people expect AI will change how they do their job in the next 5 years. That's a majority.
Okay, expecting change.
But only 36% believe AI will actually replace their job entirely in that same time frame.
So transformation, not necessarily elimination in most people's minds.
Seems that way. People are anticipating adaptation, perhaps.
And that sort of pragmatic view, or maybe just inevitability, it's definitely reflected in where the money is going. We're seeing a massive flood of capital into AI. The economic engine is fully fired up. Corporate AI investment hit a new record, $252.3 billion in 2024. That's 26% growth year over year.
$250 billion. And growing fast. Money talks, as they say.
And it is screaming AI right now.
And it's not just investment, it's actual use. Adoption isn't just a plan anymore, it's happening. Generative AI use within organizations more than doubled in just 1 year. Went from 33% of survey respondents saying they used it in at least one business function in 2023, all the way up to 71% in 2024.
71%. So AI is basically a standard operating procedure now in most businesses.
It's becoming deeply embedded, across almost every function.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've covered a really complex year, defined by this intense tension, right? On one hand, these spectacular leaps in efficiency, that 142x model size reduction, the explosion in video quality, even Nobel Prizes, amazing stuff. But on the other hand, these very real, persistent struggles. Complex reasoning is still hard, the public data pool is shrinking fast, responsible AI practices are lagging, and bias remains stubbornly baked in.
So what does this all really mean for you, looking ahead? If you connect these threads, you start to see this potential structural conflict brewing over the next few years. Think about it. The compute needed for the top AI models, it's roughly doubling every 5 months. That drives this relentless push for bigger, better, faster.
Right, that acceleration we talked about.
But at the same time, the public training data, it's actively shrinking. Those website restrictions hitting 20, 33%. That's a real constraint. And the governance, the rules like the EU AI Act, they're only just starting to come online and be enforced. So the big question we have to ask is this pace of innovation simply too fast for the ecosystem to handle safely? Are we heading for a collision where developers chasing performance feel forced to rely more on potentially less safe synthetic data because the real stuff is locked away? Or maybe they risk ignoring new compliance rules just to keep up with the sheer speed of technical change?
That imbalanced breakneck acceleration versus the slower pace of safety, data sustainability, and regulation that feels like the critical balancing act for the next few years. That's the tightrope AI is walking. Hopefully this deep dive gives you the context you need to navigate it. Use this synthesized knowledge in your own work, your conversations, your explorations. Thanks for joining us.